The evening sun was sinking behind the Wyoming breaks when Evelyn Carter stepped off the creaking westbound coach, her boots touching frontier soil for the first time. She carried only a single carpet bag and the remnants of her pride, both frayed from the long road that had driven her away from the respectable East, a penniless teacher, dismissed without ceremony after refusing the son of a wealthy patron. She had been whispered about, blamed, and quietly pushed out of everything she had worked for. Now, with winter creeping across the plains and her future hollow as an abandoned barn, she stood in the raw, merciless heart of Bristle Ridge, a town built from stubborn will, cracked timber, and the grit of people who had nowhere else to run. The wind here carried the rattle of distant hills and the scent of hard living. Men watched her with narrowed suspicion, women with guarded calculation, and she felt her resolve thinning by the heartbeat. She was turning to ask the driver if she could stay on the coach to the next town when a tall, broad-shouldered cowboy approached, moving with the weary confidence of a man who had survived storms no one else had seen. His hat was low, his eyes a somber blue, and his voice, when he finally spoke, held the quiet weight of a life too often marked by loss. "Ma'am," he said, removing his hat with respectful solemnity, "my name's Cole Maddox. I own a ranch out past Alder Creek. I reckon I may be speaking out of turn. But you look like someone who's run out of places to go." Evelyn stiffened, unsure whether to flee or listen. Yet something in his expression, tired, honest, deeply human, made her stay rooted. He continued, choosing each word like a fragile truth. "I've got 2 boys who ain't had a mother in 3 years. They're good kids, but wild as colts without a hand to gentle them. My ranch is holding on, but just barely. I need help, real help. And you, miss, you look like someone who needs a home more than she needs pride." A flush rose to her cheeks, not from insult, but from the terrifying accuracy of his observation. She tried to form words, polite refusal, cautious inquiry, anything, but he lifted a hand gently. "I ain't asking for nothing inappropriate. I'm asking for a partnership. You care for my boys, keep their lives steady, and have a safe roof over your head. And if in time we find something more, well, that'll be between us and the Lord." Evelyn swallowed hard. The wind tugged at her, out as if urging her to step toward a future she had never imagined. Her life had been reduced to a single choice: trust a stranger or disappear into the cold night with no prospects at all. Cole waited, hat still clutched respectfully. A man prepared to be rejected, but brave enough to offer what little he had. She studied him, the rough hands, the grief-shaped lines around his eyes, the steadiness of a man who had weathered storms and still kept standing. Her heart tugged painfully. This was madness. This was salvation. This was the frontier. And somehow she knew that the road ahead with this man and his boys would be harder, lonelier, and more rewarding than anything she had known. "Mr. Maddox," she whispered, steadying her voice, "I don't know the first thing about ranch life, but I know how to care, how to teach, and how to survive when the world tries to break me." His eyes softened, a flicker of hope touching the edges of despair. "Then you'll fit right in." And in that moment, the dusty street, the murmuring townsfolk, the heavy loneliness of her past, all of it faded, replaced by a fragile, trembling sense of purpose. She stepped toward him, and with that single step, Evelyn Carter walked out of the ruins of her old life and into the beginning of a story shaped by courage, family, and fate. If you want the full journey of sacrifice, redemption, and the frontier spirit, make sure you subscribe. Your support keeps tales like this alive. The ride to Maddox Ranch stretched across miles of rolling sagebrush, frozen creeks, and slopes where autumn's last gold clung stubbornly to the aspens. Evelyn sat beside Cole in the wagon, every jolt whispering that she had entered a world far harsher and perhaps far more honest than the one she had left behind. When they finally crested the ridge overlooking the ranch, she saw a sweep of land scarred by wind, yet filled with quiet dignity. A weather-beaten barn leaning slightly to the east, fences patched with dedication instead of money, and a homestead that looked like it survived on stubbornness alone. On the porch stood two boys dressed in dust and mischief. Tommy, 9, tall for his age and watchful. Jack, only 6, clutching a wooden horse like a shield against the unknown. They stared at her with the unfiltered fear of children who had already learned that the world could take everything from them. Evelyn approached slowly, kneeling to match their gaze, and introduced herself with a smile more gentle than confident. "I'm Miss Carter. I hear you two like adventures." The boys exchanged a glance, so quiet yet so desperate that it struck her deeper than any insult she'd endured back east. Dinner that night was a lesson in unspoken wounds. The boys hovered near her, torn between curiosity and distrust, while Cole observed them all with the quiet patience of a man, praying the future might finally bend in his favor. As days passed, Evelyn threw herself into the work of the ranch, with blistered hands, aching muscles, and a determination fierce enough to silence doubt. She cleaned the home with a teacher's precision, mended torn shirts, taught lessons by lamplight, and learned to ride a mare who tested her resolve at every turn. And though she had come believing she was only accepting shelter, she found herself building something deeper, a rhythm, a purpose, a fragile sense of belonging. Yet not all corners of the frontier welcomed peace. Rumors of rustlers prowled the valley, men desperate after failed harvests, willing to steal cattle or shed blood. Cole tried to shield her from the growing danger, but Evelyn saw the way he returned each evening with his jaw tight, eyes searching the horizon for threats only widowers understood. One night, after chasing off trespassers near the north fence, Cole returned shaken, not from fear for himself, but fear of leaving his boys alone again. Evelyn approached him on the porch, the lantern casting soft gold across the tired strain in his features. "You worry too much," she murmured. "I worry exactly as much as a father does," he replied, voice graveled by truth. In that moment, she saw him clearly, not just as the rancher who had offered her refuge, but as a man carrying a heart stitched together by duty and grief. Without thinking, she touched his arm, and the warmth of that simple gesture bridged months of loneliness. The boys, too, began to heal. Tommy started bringing her wildflowers he insisted he found by accident, while Jack quietly slipped his hand into hers during storms. Slowly, the house began to feel like a home. Not perfect, not grand, but honest. Then came the night the rustlers struck for real. Gunshots split the darkness, cattle scattering in terror across the yard. Cole shouted for Evelyn to get the boys inside, but instead of panicking, she grabbed the rifle from the mantel, hands trembling but spirit unbroken, and stood directly beside him. Together they defended what little they had, their courage rising like fire in the cold night. When the danger finally passed and the rustlers fled, Cole turned to her with disbelief and awe. "Why'd you stay out here with me?" he asked softly. Evelyn, breathless yet steady, whispered, "Because this is my home too, if you'll still have me." The silence that followed held more promise than any vow. And when Cole took her hand, rough palms wrapping gently around her shaking fingers, the boys watching from the doorway knew something had changed forever. The Maddox Ranch had not just gained a teacher. It had gained a mother, a partner, a woman whose resilience matched the frontier itself. Their story, like the land, was carved from hardship but destined for hope, for more frontier tales of love, grit, and unforgettable courage. Make sure you subscribe. Your support lets stories like this keep riding strong across the wild American West.